tradition. So before I go further and tell you my story, I just want you to understand. I want you to pick some of these things out as I go through my story. So if you look at somebody and just say, it takes vision, y'all.
It takes vision, y'all.
It takes faith, y'all.
It takes faith, y'all.
And it takes determination, y'all.
It takes determination.
To be a trailblazer.
To be a trailblazer.
So, I could have read my resume to you, but I decided I wouldn't read that because my resume is really just the end of this trail. But the trail, the resume doesn't speak to. So I decided I would use this time to share some of my testimony that led up to my resume. So I've been a member of Greenview since my husband Ken, and some of you know my husband Ken is the saxophone player. So my husband Ken and I moved to moved to Columbia in 1981 for me to go to law school. And that in itself says something about my husband, because we moved, myself, my son, who was 3 years old at the time, he had just finished receiving his master's degree, and so, he could have fought that, because the vision to go to law school was my vision. But he agreed to that. He was in agreement with that, and he was there with me to help me see my vision come to fruition. Yes. So my point in that is you need people to support you on that journey, on that trail that you're traveling on. Now, Ken and I both grew up in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Oh, and by the way, I came to Greenview because Reverend Brown was the preacher here. Now, some of you may not know, but Reverend Brown's wife, Mrs. Ruth Brown, was my mother's sister. So, obviously, we couldn't go anywhere but Greenview when we moved to Columbia. But I'm so thankful that it happened that way. But that just shows you how God puts things together. But I was the second child of a single parent. A single parent. And my mother and my sister and I lived with my grandparents in the inner city of Spartanburg. Now, my mother worked as a secretary for a funeral home. So she didn't make a whole lot of money. But she worked as a secretary for a funeral home to support my sister and me. Now, my sister died from lupus when 2 weeks after my 12th birthday. And my father was essentially completely absent from my life. He never openly acknowledged me. So, needless to say, I was not set up for success starting out. But that just goes to show you, it's not where you start from, it's where you finish.
All right, amen.
And those were the very same things that made me humble, because I have to be honest with you. I was kind of ashamed that I grew up in a single parent household. But that obstacle is what helped me to learn to be humble. It helped me to learn to have humility. So out of bad things, good things can come. It just depends on how you deal with them.
Yeah.
And so the next thing was for me to figure out how to go to college. And so we didn't have a lot of money, and I definitely didn't have any kind of college fund. And I couldn't afford to go to the school of my first choice, because even though I had a scholarship to go to that school, I couldn't afford to go because we just didn't have the money. It was an out-of-state school. So by the time I realized I couldn't go to that school, it was towards the end of the school year. So I very quickly applied to South Carolina State College, and within a month, I got accepted to South Carolina State.
Amen.
And then, when I went to state, just that quickly, my band director, who happened to be from state, who happened to have gone to state, he talked to the band director at South Carolina State, got him to give me an audition to be on the band, and within that 30-day period of time, I had a band scholarship.
All right.
And I was one of the first few females on the Marching 101.
All right.
So, you see how God is working, how He's putting it all together. And so then I majored in mathematics. I didn't know I didn't know why I majored in mathematics. The only reason I majored in math was because I did well in math in high school. And I got my education and science minors because I heard somewhere in high school that no matter what you major in, you best get your education minor because you never know when you might have to fall back on teaching. So I just did that. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just listening to people and doing things. But the main thing I was doing was moving forward.
All right.
Because one thing I know is that you can't move forward and backwards at the same time.
Amen.
So if you keep moving forward, you're going to be all right.
All right.
So I went ahead and I did that. I got my degree in math and education and all of that. And so fast forward about 9 years after that. And Ken and I were living in Virginia Beach at the time. And guess what job I ended up having during that period of time? Teaching.
All
exactly.
Right.
So he knew exactly what I needed to do. But all through that, I still did not know what I really wanted to do. I didn't know where this trail was taking me. So I was just staying on the trail. I was just cutting down bushes and fighting bears and snakes and trying to climb mountains. But I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I needed to go somewhere. And so 9 years later, all this time I'm praying, Lord, tell me what you want me to do. I don't know. Just give me a sign or something. And then one day I was in the bedroom and I was grading some math papers, and all of a sudden, I don't know if it was if I heard it, I don't know if it was a noise, I don't know what it was, but something came into me that said, go to law school. And I knew that was it. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I just knew that was it. And so I started researching again, my little crazy analytical self. I just started trying to figure out, how you going to do this, girl? So I found out you needed to go take the LSAT, you needed to pass the LSAT, you needed to fill out the application for law school, and you needed to apply to law school. So I did all of that. And I'm telling you, once I knew it, it was in me, it was no stopping. And so by the next semester of school starting, I had been accepted into law school. Now understand, I had never even met a lawyer. I didn't know what lawyers do. I never had a conversation with a lawyer. So, and it's probably a good thing, because if I knew, I probably never would have gone. Because once I found out how difficult it was, I probably never, if I knew, I never would have put myself through that. So it was stepping out on faith and my vision. And so once I finished law school, we decided to move to Columbia, and Ken applied to the public school system. Here's the thing. Ken didn't have a job when we moved down here. My finances were not straight when we moved here for me to go to school. But somehow, Ken applied to Benedict in a month. Ken had a job at Benedict. The director of the music department at Benedict told him, I don't even know how you got this job because we didn't even have a job. So you shouldn't even be working here. But that's the grace of God. He made a job for him. And then for me, my money still was not good to go to school. All this, I moved my family down here. We're living with my sister-in-law, who took us in so I could go to law school. So the money was not there. I went to the dean of the school. I said, I need some help. My money's not in. He said, well, why you even move here if you know the money wasn't in place? Well, I knew why I moved. I moved because I heard it. I knew that's what I was supposed to do, but he didn't know that. So he said, well, maybe you can go next semester. I said, well, I don't know what else I can do. So here's what I said to myself. Joyce, all you can do is all you can do. And after you've done all you can do, you have to give it to God. And so that's exactly what I did. I gave it to him. But what I did, I knew that you can't just give it to him and let it sit there. You got to do something too.
All right.
So what I did was I just started going to class. It wasn't paid for. I just was going. I said, I'm just going to class. That's all I can do is go to class.
All right.
So I went to class the first day, and I went to class the second day, and I'm still not enrolled in school. I went the third day, and the fourth, and several more days. And then finally, through the grace of God, that money came through at the very last minute.
All right.
And I went through school, but here's another thing. As I was going through school, as I was going to those classes, and one of those classes was an orientation, and they told me during that class that we're starting a brand new program this year where you can get your law degree and your master's in business at the same time. If you just add one more year to go into law school. Well, I jumped on that opportunity. And so when I graduated from law school, not only did I graduate with a law degree, but I also graduated with a master's degree in business administration.
All right. Amen.
So that's the course that I've taken. That's the trail that I have run on. That's where I started from. And that's why I'm standing here in front of you today. In between all of that, of course, I've worked as an attorney. My first job was as the general counsel for the Children's Foster Care Review Board. While I was there, a friend of mine, who was my son's teacher, called me and asked me if I knew any African Americans who were interested in working at the South Carolina Court of Appeals. So 2 months later, I was working at the South Carolina Court of Appeals. Because, I knew somebody who was interested. And while I was there, the chief judge observed my work and asked me if I would come and do a clerkship for him. So I ended up working for the chief judge of the South Carolina Court of Appeals. I've had my own private practice since that time. I've served as interim director of the American Civil Liberties Union. I've served on several boards and commissions, nonprofit boards. From what they tell me, I was the first African American female to serve on the South Carolina Chamber Board of Directors. So my point to you is all of this. That's the abbreviated version of my story. And hopefully you saw some of those traits, that vision, that faith, that determination that it takes to be a trailblazer. But here's the good news, Greenview. Everybody has a trailblazer in them. Everybody has a trailblazer in them. We're all unique. We all have our own story. And there's no age limits to it. And so we just have to figure it out, y'all. We just have to keep moving forward. We just have to go to God, ask for the answers, and He'll give us those answers. So if you take anything away today from what you consider me to be as a trailblazer or have a successful career, please understand this. First and foremost, it's the grace of God. Second, it is hard work. Just pure and simple hard work. It's humility, and it's a lot of support from your family and from all of those people who are there to help you survive. Because I'm telling you, I couldn't have made it if it wasn't for Miss Ruth Brown cooking me food every single week. I couldn't have made it. And I'm telling you, I couldn't have made it when she passed and Miss Wise took over, started cooking for me right there after that. And I couldn't have made it if it hadn't been for Miss Davis, who started cooking for me after that. And none of these people, I asked them to do it. They just saw that I was trying to do something